Well, the interview of Jordan Peterson by Cathy Newman, that really was something. Some of you have seen it, no doubt. Recently, Jordan Peterson, he's a psychologist and a Canadian college professor, was interviewed by a British journalist named Cathy Newman. Well, it was a wide ranging interview, but one thing that they touched upon was the issue of offensiveness. And a little backstory here. Jordan Peterson has made waves because he's refused to use these so called transgender pronouns, instead of calling people he or she, calling them something like Zier or whatever these ridiculous formulations are. And some people have said this is offensive, and they even want him punished up in Canada for that because they have hate speech laws up there. They could do that. Well, anyway, Cathy Newman addressed this, and what she asked Peterson in essence was, well, why should your right to free speech take precedence over someone else's right to not be offended? Now, Peterson handled this pretty well, but really the answer is very simple. There is no right to not be offended. There cannot be because it's completely subjective. Most everything offends someone, and most everyone is offended by something. Now, what that means is that you could never secure a so called right to not be offended unless you outlawed most everything, because most everything offends someone. Now, what does this tell you about the idea that not being offended could be a right? Well, does a human right pertain to only a small select group, or does it pertain to all humans? Except maybe those who are in prison and we deny them their rights, that's a different thing. Which is it? Select group or all humans? Obviously, it's the latter. Well, that alone, not that this should have to be illustrated, it's obvious, should tell you that there can be no right to not be offended. The whole thing is ridiculous because you could only ensure that certain groups of people, privileged groups, were protected from offensiveness. And of course, that's exactly what's happening in today's society. Leftists never worry about offending groups they don't like, be they whites or Christians, conservatives, just go right down the list. Cathy Newman didn't worry about this, and Jordan Peterson pointed that out. He basically said, listen, what you're saying right now could be offending me. It could be offending millions of conservatives watching in TV land. Yet does that mean that you should be denied your freedom of speech? And you see, this is how you know that offensiveness with the left is like so many other things, like diversity, equality. It's something that the left trumpets but doesn't really believe in it. In fact, offensiveness is a ploy. Now, what do I mean? Well, if the left were honest, when hearing things that they don't like, they would just say, I don't like that, and I want you to shut up, and I wish I could silence you with hate speech laws like they have in Canada or overseas in Europe. But they don't want to do that because, see, that would make them seem intolerant, which of course is what they are. So what they do is they say, that's offensive. And that way they flip it around. They put the onus on you. They make you seem like the intolerant one. And it's something they do very, very instinctively. And it's very effective at shutting people up. And that's why you shouldn't let it work. If someone says to you, I'm offended, you just say, I'm offended that you're offended. Now stick it where the sun don't shine. And if you're too much of a child to discuss things maturely, then you know what? Step aside and leave the real issues to adults and go off and cry in a corner in your safe space.